Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. When Crimsix starts going rogue on the timeline, he simply does not know when to stop, calling out a number of Call of Duty League organizations over the last day or so, but then going on to double down against the general manager of the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that. First of all, this from Methods from the Ultra side for now, but well, how long will he be over there? Washington DC potentially calling, Zinni getting ready to protect and serve. Lots of discussion yesterday from Zuma, also from Crone, the possibility that yes, this Washington DC buying out the Chicago spots, moving it over there is very likely indeed. If Methods has the opportunity on the table, may well be something we see over the coming weeks and months when things get locked in. This also with relation to this from Facento. Since retiring from Call of Duty, Facento went on to coach the United squad that won the stage, I suppose the stage season playoffs for Black Ops 4, but also the World Championship that year. And well, after that, then he went on to found a talent organization called Bad Moon Talent, representing a number of pro players and also talent within especially the Call of Duty scene. Could he be thinking right here, okay, if Washington DC is coming into the scene as a Call of Duty League team, do I bring in some like influencers under my talent brand, and maybe I can like pitch them to the DC spot or whatever the case may be. So at least obviously all speculation, but I'm sure Facento's keeping a pretty close eye on what is going on in the Call of Duty scene, and this may of course be related to the possibility of that spot coming to fruition relatively soon. This then from the New York Subliners, 10th, well that being October 21st, 2021, a crowd4aking.com. So well, here you go. There are a lot of people looking at this. Okay, is this talking about their Call of Duty League roster? Could something be going on? For those who rule the deep, it's a very cryptic indeed. You see this paper bag on screen right here. We'll look at that in a second. Your moment has arrived. And I mean, they go on to say, especially when we look at the website, a crown made for a king, etc., etc., is something going on here with their team. It seems, but reading between the lines, indeed that very much is the case. If we look on right here, their website, you will find it the following. Firstly, you get to this page, which says, for those who rule the deep on the left-hand side, which kind of interesting, right? Because this is a very similar wording to what we've seen, for example, at the Flying Mutineers or Seattle, these kind of organizations. And on the right-hand side, you've got this paper bag that you can actually buy if you wanted for $50, and the proceeds will go to the New York Marine Center. But anyway, this is the kind of thing that's going on. People are trying to figure out, okay, what does this exactly mean? And one of the best pieces of detective work that I have seen comes out from Xavier at Hey I'm Recover, saying the following: Neptune going to the Subliners. King Neptune from the SpongeBob movie, ruler of the deep. He had to wear a paper bag on his head because his bald head was so shiny, and as we just looked at right there, this was the image, of course, involved. I mean, King Neptune with the paper bag on his head, ruler of the deep. It just, everything pieces together and makes so much sense. A good bit of detective work. We imagine that, well, this is, of course, what it is referring to, that indeed on the 21st of October, we're going to get a confirmation of Neptune joining the Subliners, and you would imagine that if that was the case, we'd also, along similar lines at the same time, receive a confirmation of Crimsix also joining the Subliners, and their roster they are supposedly going to be fielding of Clayster, Crimsix, Hydra, and Neptune going into 2022, or at least the CDL for 2022. So, you're imagining that's what's going to happen in 6 days' time. We're thinking Subliners are probably going to come out and do some sort of announcement. But speaking of Crimsix, this is well when he begins to go rogue last night. So Crimsix speaks on the salary situation currently imposed by many teams in the league, with a lot of discontent towards the effect on the pro players. So of course Crimsix, I'm sure he's making a fair bit of money and will continue to over at the Subliner side, but there's many a player who, like, maybe they were paid a lot of money, or at least the league generally overpaid players, you could well argue, in the first year. There was a lot of players we'll probably talk about in a couple of minutes time here on massive salaries, but since then things have very much been going the other way. A lot of organizations trying to lowball players, and I mean, he says like a third of the league is saying we're going to pay you in goddamn dimes, try and pay you the absolute bare minimum. Of course we know Paris Legion is trying to do stuff like this. Other organizations were not quite so sure until he said the following, and I mean, continues with stuff like this as well. So very interesting stuff. I'll play the clip to you guys on screen, and then of course he goes on to continue the discussion up against the GM of the Los Angeles Guerrillas.
When you have 1/3 of the league paying the absolute minimums on salaries, that is a huge problem. That is a joke. That is a joke. Oh, you want 20 grand more than the minimum? Nope. Get the out. Go get an AM. Like, and I'm sorry, and I probably will I'll definitely get fined for this. I'll definitely get a call from Spencer. But like, how the is that getting? How is that allowed? I'm being dead ass serious. Like, it makes me sick. It's like literally like, oh, you don't want to take the absolute dog minimum? There's probably a couple players who get paid more than me now. but like a third of the league is saying we're gonna pay you in goddamn dimes. You know, the only thing that like pisses me off the most about this is that like the people who can stop them and say like this is not right are not saying a damn thing about it. It's okay. Well, I guarantee you after this video, it might not be okay. Either I'm gonna get fined, and if I gotta get fined for them to like hopefully change this, like that's like so be it.
So Alex Rubens from LAG comes out and says there's literally one team paying minimum consistently. What are these other three teams, right? That's kind of the question. Like, okay, yeah, we know that Paris Legion are trying to pay the minimum, but are other teams, are they trying to pay the minimum? Are they trying to play close to the minimum? Like, what exactly is going on? Just because you're bottom four doesn't mean you aren't treating players correctly and paying good salaries, trying to maybe clear some hot air over Los Angeles Guerrillas, given the fact that, okay, yes, they had a pretty poor season, a very poor season, but I mean, they still treat their players well. So anyway, this is only just the beginning, let's be honest. So anyway, Crim comes back in reply. What I'm saying is, if you're in the window of deserving a salary of 100 to 200,000, there's a huge chance you either get your salary cut down to a fourth of what you deserve, or leech these teams forcefully, financially making players retire, which is very interesting to see, right? For example, a guy like aBeZy, who I imagine was played pretty reasonably over at Los Angeles Guerrillas, then goes into retirement, making a lot of money doing stock trading and stuff like this, I imagine, at the present time. But yeah, kind of interesting to see. Like, he reckons, Crimsix, that yeah, even if you might be worth $200,000, even though it's very tough to determine how much you should be worth, then you actually get cut down to, well, a much smaller percentage of that, because the team's trying to lowball you, and the organizations obviously have a lot of power right now. Alex Rubens comes back and says only one team is paying the minimum overall. Some have players on minimum, but it's with a few exceptions for a reason given the overall budget, not just because they want to offer 1/4 of what they deserve, which of course is extremely subjective. But Crim isn't so convinced. I must be the CIA of the CDL, because that's simply not true. And even if it's, let's say, 20k over the minimum, so that's kind of what he's talking about. I mean, with these four teams, or a third of the league trying to lowball, that okay, maybe Paris Legion is straight up on the minimum of 50k, or like 51,000 or whatever exactly it is this season. But I mean, like, maybe some other teams are going 20k above that, and Crimson is kind of still considering that to be pretty lowballing the players. 70k times 4 is still potentially less than a single mid-tier player's salary, especially it was in the first year. We heard talks of a guy like Scraps, for example, over at London, getting like a 300k contract that first year. And I think really that's the thing, right? Some of these organizations have realized, okay, hang on, we probably overpaid these players year one with the pandemic and everything coming into play. They're now significantly scaling back what their budgets are going to be. So I understand the direction it's going. It's just difficult for a lot of players in this situation. I see Crimsix's side, but also Alex Rubens making a very credible business argument from that side of things. But of course, there are positives and negatives to both situations. LAG is not in that 1/3. You guys actually overpaid your roster in 2021 IMO, says Crimsix. You think a mid-tier player should make 280k standard in a league that barely pulls in 40k viewers for FaZe versus Toronto. And for what it's worth, we overpaid every year because we want our players to be happy and want to play for us, which is hard because of, well, season one, of course, which is pretty tragic. I agree, but that's on everyone. That's on the players, on the teams, on the developer, even on Activision for the lack of viewership. The ironic stuff is I've signed 3 CDL contracts and I've had salary cuts in 2 out of 3 of them, despite my career and my following. But this is far from the end. It continues as follows. I think, if anything, both of them are kind of getting towards the same ideas, but I don't know. It just goes back and forth here in such a way that maybe wasn't necessary, and especially in these next few tweets. You guys will see. All I'm saying is, if this is something you're passionate about, this isn't how you affect change. It's just for the memes. Work with your team and raise the tide. Don't blast the supposed bottom third that pays in dimes to fans who don't control or understand team business models. I'll blast them to the moon, and so should everyone else. We have an org for one of the biggest cities in the world, he's talking about Paris, that hasn't put a single piece of content out in 2 years in a $300 million league. Do you have 4 orgs doing that, or just one? Your previous org was averaging 1,500 views a video, so kind of like almost a personal shot really here from Alex to Crimsix. With your career and following, how do you expect people to offset mid-tier players who deserve 1.2 million salary without some concessions? Use your brain too. So Crimsix isn't just going to take that one line down. He comes out with the following: use my brain. I've used my brain to do whatever they asked in terms of content to avoid fines. Oh, and I also implemented hourly rates for said content. Relevance is little, as I thought they ran content quite poorly. But since you threw a dagger, I'm going to swing a broadsword at you. Before Zenith blew up on Twitch, the org that said they'd rather have Zenith, so this is what we discussed yesterday. Kind of saying, like, you know, was Crimsix talking to Washington, because that was kind of the discussion of the day. I thought that was kind of strange. Apparently, it's actually Los Angeles Guerrillas. Apparently, the org that said they'd rather have Zinni over me was not only LAG, but it was you yourself. You thought it would be better to go and build with Zinni as well as it being cheaper than to build around me, because he said yesterday that getting methods if they wanted to get him onto LAG. Of course, they haven't done. They got Slasher as their main AR instead, and not Crimsix either, of course. But I mean, still, if they wanted to do that, Crimsix was saying yesterday that would cost them 5 to 8 times as much as just getting methods over there. And I mean, apparently, like Alex Rubens and LAG decided that would be a preferable option until I suppose the team decided to go down the Slasher route. Something that also blows my mind is that these orgs have people such as yourself making calls. I bet it wasn't pleasant to impact Price, that being Eggs, of course, when he was on the Los Angeles Guerrillas team in the first year, played your wallet and your egos like a filth. So Crimsix's not taking this one lying down. And as Alex continues, there's a bit more back and forth, really. I'm not daggering or fighting with you. Like, I think Alex and Crimsix both make fair points, but it just about finally ends here. Don't backpedal with me. I was talking about the Paris Legion's lack of effort, and you hit me with a view account check on a channel that I do not own, do not profit off of, do not control, and making that content was an absolute necessity to getting a paycheck. Good night. If you think me telling you to think about the holistic picture is backpedaling, I think you just proved my point. If there's one thing that Hex taught me about esports and building with esports is this: the holistic picture is the players and the community. Both are being severely neglected. Take away these two things, we are dead in the water. So I think like Alex is making a good business argument, but Crimsix is talking about this from the future of the league perspective. As he goes on to kind of explain here on the Reddit, it's not about the salaries, it's about how the teams offering minimums are going to slowly but surely chop player personalities one by one. The players' personalities community is what separates Call of Duty from these other esports. Certainly agree with that one. Stop talking financials, start looking at the history of those games when the big name players started dropping like flies and the opportunity for newcomers to establish followings was non-existent. So this is kind of what Crimsix is getting at the end of the day. The fact that these organizations are underpaying players means that players either have to do other things, or the fact that if they do get big salaries, they're just going to get cut in the future seasons. And it doesn't really help the players actually themselves make personalities for themselves and last over the test of time. And Crimsix has been talking about getting a number of salary cuts as well. So I think that both of these guys make fair points, but Crimsix simply cannot be stopped right now. He's been on an absolute rampage. And just to finish off with this, everyone read the all caps part for a second here. This is the thing about one of the biggest cities in the world not putting out a single piece of content. Of course, well, Paris Legion, that I suppose belongs to you. But very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. Really upset that YouTube icon and like you enjoyed this content. I'd be like you may enjoy this content as well, and I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care, and I will see you next time.